Cool. Is that a spider? No, it's not a spider. It's just a piece of fluff. Hello! Welcome to this nice setup I've got going on here in my conservatory because there's no natural light anywhere else, and I also couldn't be bothered to move my ring light today. Alright, buckle in everyone. We're gonna have a very, very long story to tell. And this is the story of my top surgery and how I got it and the process I went through, because it certainly was not straightforward and it was very different to other people's. Kane, where are you gonna be, Kane? Kane, I'm gonna need some magical editing here, adding in some of the photos and videos and things, as well as I'll help explain it to you with a map showing how I did things, because I went to San Francisco, but not by plane, and it'd be helpful to show my journey with a map, maybe. Do you think you could do that for me? Thank you. I hope I make sense when I explain all of this. Ah, goodness. So, to start off with, two things. One, I'm trans. I'm non-binary, which basically means I don't identify as male or female, and I never have. But at the time of this story taking place, I was identifying as FTM, which means female to male. I genuinely thought I was a boy. Well, I sort of thought I was a boy. I was quite chill about it, but I felt like I had to prove myself a lot in order to get this surgery. Two, top surgery, if you don't know, is a process that many biologically born female people will go through, where it is, to put it in the least crude way possible, breasts gone. They get rid of them. By surgery, you get them cut off, right? It's a process, without sounding a bit horrible. Now, a little bit of a warning for this video. We will be talking about boobs a little bit. I'm sorry. We'll also maybe be talking about, you know, some of the images may be a tad gruesome. Not fully like chest open gruesome, but just like a bit scabby every now and then. But I will make sure there is a warning before. Kane, can you chuck in a warning before the gruesome bit? Those are the two things. So I was unfortunate. It's been a long day. I was blessed, as some people said, with a rather large chest. Shall we say I was a G cup. Rather large for me, who is 5'3", and these are the oh God, I hate saying it. This was the chest I had beforehand, and it was not fun as a trans person who really did not want them under any circumstance. I never had. I knew as soon as I hit puberty I never wanted them. They made me uncomfortable, and they made me feel dreadful. They were physically exhausting and painful. They hurt my back. They were really a problem. If I hadn't been trans, I probably would have got them reduced either way. But I never liked them, right? And all good to you if you like yours, but I never liked mine. They made me feel so dreadful and uncomfortable. They made me so dysphoric. I have always had, by the age of year like 7, year 8, I was already sporting like a C to D cup, and that's rather large. And it was quite stressful for me, and I felt pretty dreadful. And then I came out as trans, and I knew for a fact that I didn't want them. I didn't want them when I was around 15, 16, came out as trans, and I just wanted them gone. It's really difficult in the UK to have top surgery under 18. It's doable, but it's so difficult. There are so many problems, and there are so many places that stop, and even me, who was going to go privately and pay for it myself and not go through the NHS, struggled to find a way to do it, even with all my parents, like both my dad and my mum's consent. It was a struggle. So I looked into all my options. I looked into loads of different surgeons in the UK. I emailed loads. I said, you know, this was when I was around 16, very close to being 17. I emailed loads of surgeons, said I've got the money, I've got my parents' permission. You know, would you do surgery on someone who's under 18? Well, I will be 17 by the time I have this surgery. And a few surgeons got back to me and said, yeah, but you need a gender specialist referral. And I was like, brilliant. brilliant. I thought, well, I'll have a look into that. So I looked at lots of different gender specialists and I said, will you give me a referral? And they said, no, you're under 18. No, you're under 18. Yes, but blah, blah, blah. You know, yes, but we might not take it. Yes, blah, 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 but no. And it was a mission. I knew that this was something I needed. I had known this since like the age of like 9 or 10 when I started puberty, because I started puberty quite young. I got my first period when I was 10 years old. It was so frustrating because this was something that was making me depressed. I felt dreadful about myself. I felt self-conscious. I had actually been on testosterone, which if you don't know is the male hormone, a male hormone. I'd been on that for about 6 months while I was looking into this. Well, just a few months, and then it was 6 months by the time I actually got the surgery. And that had made me gain a lot of weight, which is not a problem, but it was something that I was already self-conscious about, and that only made my chest bigger. And while it did change other things, it didn't actually work in the end, but that's a story for another time, what my hormones do. In the end, it just wasn't working out in the UK, and we thought, well, Mum couldn't stand seeing me like that. Unfortunately, we had the funds to go private, and I said, you know, well, you know, I know they do it in America under 18 as a passing comment, and Mum was like, well, why don't we go to America then? And I was like, no, we can't go all the way to America to get top surgery. She's like, well, you know, she said, realistically, can you wait another year? And I was like, no, probably not. I was so depressed, I was so down, and I was so done. I don't know if I would have lasted another year without sounding really horrible and really dark, but I was genuine in a dreadful, dreadful place. In the end, we looked into American surgeons, and the surgeons were actually really good, and a lot of them did informed consent. Consent, as long as you're over 16, you have your parents' permission, you can decide for yourself whether this is something you think is right, and basically you sign a load of stuff saying that you can't sue them if you regret your decision. And I was over 16 at this point. I was nearly 17, and we started looking into loads of surgeons all across America who offered these things, and they generally offered without a referral from a gender specialist. Now there is a big debate. I don't know whether it's some people, yeah, I think I would have got it done with a referral if I could have, but I couldn't. Otherwise, I would recommend getting a referral. It's always great to have your back covered. In the end, we looked at loads of different ones, and I kind of narrowed it down to a few. One in Canada, actually, another one in like South Carolina, I think, and then Dr. Mossa in San Francisco, which, if you don't know, we live in England. Please show a map here, Kane. We live in England, and San Francisco is here, and I needed to get from A to B. And you know, we contacted Dr. Mossa. This was very far away. We contacted Dr. Mossa and said, well, we're from the UK, from Cornwall. How do you feel about maybe doing this? What's the process? What should we do? Blah, 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 blah. Would you even be willing to accept a UK patient? The whole team got back to me, and we had phone calls. It was very funny with time differences. So they're 8 hours behind the UK. So there were some fun time differences happening here. It was a process. The surgeon's place was really, really great. I loved Dr. Moss's results. I thought they were so good at all the pictures, and I saw them and I thought, yeah, that's the type of thing I want. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for. That's what I want. And in the end, we booked it. We booked a surgery with Dr. Mossa. I needed to get one referral, but I knew that he would take it from this one person who would definitely give me a referral. So I went to Vicky Pastersky up in Harley Street. Then when I got there, found out she could have given me a referral to a UK surgeon, but it was too late now. We'd already booked the thing to San Francisco. Now you're thinking, yeah, easy peasy, just jump on a plane, fly over. No, not for me. We went to Vicky Pastersky. I stayed in like this overnight, it was like a sleeper train, and you can get them in the UK, and we got all the way up from Cornwall to London, and I'd never done that before. They gave us little chocolates. I slept on a little bunk bed. I realised that I have a love of sleeping on trains. Sleeping on trains is like one of my favourite things. You just lie there and just like, and some people would hate that, but I think it's like a massage bed. I personally loved it. Anyway, that's not the point. Got that referral. I'd already been on testosterone for a certain amount of time, although my surgeon didn't require it. Some surgeons do. Dr. Mosser didn't, but it was always a perk that I was on it. You'd have thought that we would have just caught a plane, right? We were just A to B, you know, woo, over the map, you know. You put a little plane over the map, Kane. A little plane over the map. Awesome. You would have thought we got a plane. No, my mum's doesn't want to fly. She doesn't like flying. She used to be okay with flying, but now it freaks her out a bit now she's older. And I was like, well, Mum, how are we gonna get to San Francisco without flying? She was like, I'll figure it out. Now, we had quite a few available funds at the time. We had just inherited an amount of money, and that was so lucky. If we hadn't, and I'm so grateful, if we hadn't had that, we wouldn't have been able to do this. There was no way we would have been able to do this. We planned it like this. It was a 6-week trip. So we started, Kane, can you get the map up for me? So we started in Cornwall, and from Cornwall, we drove up to Southampton, to Portsmouth, essentially. We went to Portsmouth and we stayed in a lovely little pub in between, and it was so nice. We had a really nice dinner the night before. So we stayed in a hotel room there. I'm gonna tell you the rough idea of the story, then we'll go into it. We went to Portsmouth, and then from Portsmouth, we caught a cruise ship from Portsmouth all the way across the Atlantic Ocean to New York. We got to New York, and then we took a train up to Chicago. From Chicago, stuff happened. I will go into depth about this. From Chicago, we caught another train all the way to San Francisco. Now you're thinking, how did you get back? Did you fly? No! I did the whole journey backwards. We caught the boat back, we caught the train back, and then we got to Southampton. Instead of driving back, we trained back, and then we were back to Cornwall. But all of this took 6 weeks. Let me now go into depth and tell you what those 6 weeks of my life were, because they were insane. Hopefully Kane will be able to add the fun pictures and videos that I've hopefully been able to send him and label well enough. So we drove up to Southampton, like I mentioned, and that was fun. That was nice and easy. We stayed in a hotel. I messed around. I was thoroughly excited. I was like, woo! I'm gonna get my boobies cut off. Woo! I was so excited. I had a hotel room to myself because I was finally at that age where I can have hotel rooms to myself. I danced on the bed for a while, took some stupid pictures, and then the next day we went to the boat. Now, I can't express to you how big the boat was. You may have been on a cruise ship before. That's awesome. I'd never been on a cruise ship before, and I couldn't fathom how the boat had 11 stories. I didn't get this. As I approached the boat, I still couldn't get my head around how big the boat was. Wow. Every tiny little hole in the boat that you might be able to see in these pictures was actually a tiny weeny window or balcony, right? It was massive. I couldn't fathom it. Even when I was on it, I couldn't fathom how big the boat was. I was so excited. I was looking at the decks. The decks were incredible. There was like a pool on the back of the boat. There was a pool on the top of the boat. There was like 6 pools on this boat. There was like 4 or 5 restaurants. There was a theatre. There was a ballroom. There was a nightclub, which I don't think I got a picture of because I was too young to go in it anyway. And it was just like the cabin. We were in like one of the cheaper cabins, and it was just the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. It was like the most first world luxury thing I had ever experienced. You know, we didn't used to have loads of money, but as I grew up, my mum worked really hard and things, and you know, but I'd still never at this point throughout my life before this moment experienced luxury like that. Never. I suddenly thought to myself, oh my goodness, the amount of money that this must cost to run. And I was just blown away by the culture shock. But I'd never experienced it. It was just luxury like I'd never known. There was a 24-hour buffet on this boat that I spent a lot of time in. However, we were going in around November time, which was storm season on the Atlantic, which was so fun. So there were some mighty waves happening, and I won't lie, I'd say about 70% of the boat got seasick, including some of the staff who work on the boat. I generally quite enjoy being on the sea. I'm not scared of boats. I don't generally get seasick, but I've only ever been on little boats. But the constant rocking, bearing in mind this boat is so massive that usually on just on the normal kind of Atlantic, you can't even feel it moving. It's so huge. You don't get this constant, it's not like a little ferry. It's not like something that takes you to France across the channel. Even in these storms, the boat was rocking. I remember seeing the railing outside. I was sat in the buffet, just nomming down on my various cakes and treats and food and American bacon, which I'd never experienced before. This was the horizon and this was the railing, and it was just going, like, just wobbling. It was unreal. The fun part about the boat, right? I come from Cornwall in the UK. We have little to no diversity down here. And I don't mean that in like I've got a problem with diversity. I love diversity. It's just in Cornwall, we generally don't have much racial diversity down here. We don't have much diversity, full stop. There is some, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it's all white, but a lot of the stuff down here is generally locals, and tourism only happens really at one time of year. And so, you know, this was again a huge culture shock for me, and not in a bad way at all. I loved it. I thrived. I was like, whoa, this is what the world should be. But for me, it was just so different. I'd never really spoken with Americans before. I have one American friend from college. Shout out to Ben. I love Ben. Not that it matters that he's American, but we love Ben. Ben's cool. On the boat, there was a general mix of Americans and British people, because this boat was going from Southampton to New York, New York to Southampton, Southampton to New York, New York to Southampton. So generally, you had Americans that had just gone to England and were going back home, and you had English people who were going to New York and then gonna come back home. So you had a real mix of American and British people on this boat, and you did have a few other, you know, nationalities and things, but generally it was majority this. And this for me was so exciting. I was like, wow, I was sat in a room and I wasn't just hearing British accents, and I was thinking, this is so fun, I love this. Some nights we went out and you get put on a table with a load of just a group of random people who were just selected to sit on your table with you, and we had a massive round table, and there were only 3 British people out of about 9 on this table, and it was so cool because I'd never spoken to people who just had a completely different way of life to me, and you wouldn't think it'd be that different as another English-speaking culture, majority English-speaking culture, but it was. And it was so fun hearing these stories from all these different people. Some people from like San Francisco. I spoke to some people from like more like mid-America, like middle of America. There was this one lady who was from New York but lived in Florida, and oh my goodness, she was so cool. We became really good friends with her that week. I still have her on Facebook. She's awesome. Sorry, I feel like I'm going on about this for ages. Anyway, we got to New York in the end after a lot of seasickness. There was like a screen on the boat that told us how often we'd get, like how far away we are. We got to New York, and I won't lie to you, I was terrified. I was so scared for 2 things. One, it was something I'd never experienced. I'd been to London quite a few times, but I'd never been to somewhere like New York. American cities hit different. America hits different. As somebody who grew up in a very, very sheltered Cornwall in the UK, it was like a different world. And I was also extremely nervous for my surgery that was going to be happening, because while this was fun, at the end of it, I had to have needles put in me and I was doing a surgery, and I was very, very, very scared. We stayed in New York for a night, and that was awesome. From New York, we caught a train up to Chicago. Which is, that took about a day. Oh, by the way, the boat took a week. It wasn't like a day trip, it was a whole week on the boat. That was a long trip. The first train took about a day, but it ran really late. It ended up being delayed by about 6 to 8 hours. It did have like a bed and stuff, but in that time I travelled through all of New York State. I basically went up, because New York isn't just a city, it's a whole state, in case you didn't know. We started in the city and then we went all the way up to like Niagara, essentially, border of Canada, and then it comes across like underneath, like through Ohio and like Indiana, I want to say. I'm not great with my states. All the way into Chicago, Illinois. I'm pretty sure I've got that right. So we got to Chicago, and because our train ran so late, we weren't able to catch the next train we had to catch, which was the long one to California, and that was a bit scary. Fortunately, we'd left loads of time before my surgery, so it didn't matter if the train was a bit delayed, but it was still very scary. So we ended up having to spend a night in Chicago, paid for by the company because they were late, not us. They paid for all of it for us, like the accommodation and the taxi and stuff to get to the hotel. So we had a random night in Chicago and it was awesome. Mum and I got pizza, this little diner, and it was like American. And I remember I saw like 2 police officers walk in with guns on their hips, and I was terrified because I'd never seen that in my life. And like, it was like almost like American diner bar style. Oh my, it was such an experience. And the food and the cheese was different, and it was so cold, and it was just, by the way, I bought a new iPhone while I was there. Don't tell the tax people. I bought a new iPhone there because I was there, because it's actually cheaper to buy it in America, because if you think about it, an iPhone is $1,000 here, and it's also $1,000 in America, but when you put the dollar-pound conversion rate in, it actually ends up being cheaper in America. So anyway, not the point. We caught the next train called the California Zephyr, and it was an Amtrak. We went by Amtrak, and this was a double-decker train. I have never been on a double-decker train before this. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a double-decker train. It's got 2 levels to it. And we stayed on the top level, and we had like, because we missed our train, we didn't get the bunk we should have had, so we should have had like a little room to ourselves almost, but this time no, we had just had a bunk, like 2 bunk beds, and the top one was wildly uncomfortable, and I slept on the top one, and that train we were on for about 3 to 4 days. Now, if you've ever been on a long train journey, you know that being on a train is fun for the first few hours, but I won't lie, it started to become very tiring very quick, and I didn't particularly like the train food apart from the pancakes in the morning. They were good. Yeah, so we were on that train for 4 days. Now, I will say that we passed through, we kind of did like a blah 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 from Chicago to California, if you can kind of imagine that route going right across the country. We went through Colorado, and that was the views, man, the canyons. This was just something I'd never seen before. I was blown away by the colors and the canyons and the things. And then we went through like Nevada. I think, no, was it Nevada? No, Nebraska. No, it wasn't Nebraska. One of the states beginning with N we went through. The one that's like next to California. It was very deserty. We went through there and we eventually got to California. Way! We landed in Emeryville, near San Francisco. At the time of traveling, there was a load of wildfires that were happening in California at the time, which was just dreadful. We were quite far out from these wildfires. We were about 100 miles out from these wildfires, and the smoke was unreal in San Francisco from those wildfires that were so far away. These wildfires were just unreal. The smoke in the pictures that hopefully will be put on here, you can see that like the red dot and the light is actually the sun. You can't see like anything above like 20 meters in front of you. Everything was smoky, and it was quite freaky, and especially because I was about to have surgery and I didn't want to be inhaling loads of smoke. By the time we got to California, oh, that was fun. The Uber driver crashed on the bridge while we were in it, but that's not the point. That was a bit scary, but it was kind of fun anyway. And we got to our Airbnb, and we stayed in San Bruno, which hopefully, Kane, if you can grab me a map of San Francisco area, the Bay Area, you'll see the San Bruno. And then my surgery was in like San Francisco, which was just above it, just roughly, essentially. And I stayed like right next to the airport in San Bruno, but not that we used it. And we'd left about like a few days to like explore San Francisco before I had my surgery, but because of all the wildfires, I felt like I didn't really want to go out very much, and I didn't want to inhale loads of smoke, so I didn't really get to do any sightseeing beforehand. It was an experience. I did get to go to an American mall. I spent a lot of time in Target, and Mum found a wine bottle that's as big as her head, and it was a real experience in American mall. I went to Hot Topic. I tried Hot Pockets for the first time. I saw a variety of things. I witnessed American life. Then I started getting nervous and the smoke started clearing, and then next thing you know I was going for my pre-surgery appointment, and that was terrifying. I was very, very scared. I went, I did it, I was happy. I had McDonald's afterwards. Probably shouldn't have had McDonald's afterwards, I won't lie. And then about a day or two later, I had my surgery. And basically I went in, and it wasn't in like a hospital, it was in like like a big building, like a huge, like massive, like must be like 60-story building. Like it was huge. It was one of the high rises. It was a massive building, and they had like a suite on it that was like a hospital kind of suite, but it wasn't a hospital. It was like a private medical suite essentially for them. I was the only person there in this suite. And it was wild. But basically I got there was like a few nurses and things and a few doctors, and they were really like lovely. They ushered me into a little room with my mum. My mum was with me at this point, and they were like, they gave me a diazepam because I was so nervous. I'm really scared of needles, so needles like were the big. I was actually more worried about the needles that I would have to have in my hand than I was about the surgery. I wasn't allowed to eat or drink for like 24 hours, like 12 hours beforehand or something. So from like midnight the night before, I wasn't allowed to drink or eat anything. And I knew I was quite worried about that because I've got really hard to find veins. So if you've ever had a blood test or anything, you know they've got to try and find a vein here or something. I've got really tiny ones that are really, really hard to find, and I've had so many experiences in the past where they haven't been able to find one because if I don't drink about like 2 liters of water before I go for a blood test, they cannot get blood out of me. It doesn't happen. It just does not happen. They can't do it. I have to like really prepare before these types of things, and of course I wasn't allowed to drink because in surgery they don't want you to regurgitate stuff while you're asleep just in case you choke to death, which makes perfect sense. But I was quite worried about the needle part because I knew that my veins were going to be really hard to find at this point. But they sat me down in a nice like lovely chair, very comfy chair, and they were like, all right, how you doing, and just checked I was okay, and I was like, yeah. And they were so friendly. Oh my goodness. I will say about the American healthcare system, because you've got to pay for it. You pay for the American healthcare. There's none of this NHS stuff, which I'm so grateful for the NHS. But I will say that when you pay for something private in America, or at least in my experience, it was very well done. It was very good. They were brilliant at communication. They answered every question I had. They dealt with me so well. I'm such a nervous person. I was so scared. I don't do well with people in my space. I don't do well in hospital situations. I don't do well with needles. I hate the smell of hospitals. I hate the look of them. I hate everything about it. And they were so good at calming me down. They were like really understanding that when they got the needle out to put like the drip in, like the IV in, I was so scared. And they understood that I just needed to have a little cry before they did it. They didn't rush me. She was so understanding. She was like, it's okay, you talk to your mom. She tried to talk to me while she was doing it so I didn't have to look about it and think about it. I cried quite a bit. They told me to get changed first before they did that. They told me to get changed into like this gown and like a hat, and I have like some pictures of it, I think. And it was quite funny because they told me to, they were like, oh, you can keep your pants on if you want. And I was like, my pants on? They were like, if they don't have any metal on them, they said I could keep my pants on. So I went into like this extra room, this other room, and I changed. I thought, well, what do they mean, like my boxers? Do they mean like my underwear? Or do they mean like the American pants? Do they mean like my jogging bottoms? Or like, what do they mean? I'm confused. So I went out and I was like, sorry, I think we might have a bit of a language barrier in the sense of, do you mean like my jogging bottoms? Or do you mean like my boxers? She was like, oh, sorry. I meant like your pants as in your trousers. And I was like, so I said they've got no metal on them. So I was actually allowed to keep my boxers and my my jogging bottoms on, which made me feel a lot better. I had the gown on the top, but I felt a lot more secure, a lot better, a lot calmer. She had to stab me about 3 times to even get the thingy in me, and even when they did manage to get it in me, they were like, I'm not sure how well that's in there, bit worried, might have to do it again, but we'll wait until, we might be able to like rejig it when you're asleep. And I was like, okay, cool, because I'm not sure how much more I can cope with the needle in my arm. And that was the bit I was actually most scared of. Once that was done, the diazepam, the drug I'd been given, set in quite nicely. I was attached to like a thingy-my-bob, and my mum was still with me at this point, and then they were like, all right, say bye to your mum, we're gonna go to the operating room now. And I was like, cool, so bye mum. She's like, okay, bye. So my mum left and they walked me like literally like around a corner. I came out this little room, I went around a corner into an operating room, and everyone was so friendly. They're like, hi, how you doing? Hello, how you doing? My surgeon was there. Oh no, before that happened, they the surgeon had come in and he had put like marks on my chest where things were gonna be cut and blah de blah, and then they walked into the surgery room, and like the anaesthetist
Anaesthetist.
The anaesthetic person, the one who puts you to sleep, was there, and all these nurses were there, and the people I knew were there, and I was like, hello, 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 and I was very pleased to see them. They were all very pleased to see me, and obviously, like, I'm from the UK, so we had a lot to talk about. There was always things to talk about, because they were like, oh, I love your accent. I was like, oh my goodness, I love yours too, it's so fun. I hopped up onto my own operating table, which was really fun. I did fall over while trying to get up. I stumbled a bit and they had to like give me a little hand up. It was quite a mission. It's a very tall table. I lay down, and next thing I know, there was just kind of people everywhere, and they started like putting these big long socks on my legs, which are like compression socks for surgery, and they put like pillows underneath my legs as well to like increase blood flow, I assume, in your body while you're asleep. And then I put my arms, they asked me to put my arms out, and they started strapping those down as well. And I was actually surprisingly calm. They were just chatting away at me, and they're chatting to me, and they're all really friendly. No one was being stressful. And I was like, oh, actually, this isn't too bad. I'm okay. The anaesthetist is like, hi, I'm so-and-so. How are you? You know, you're enjoying the stay so far? Oh, yeah, lovely. Oh, blah, 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 blah. And he was just talking to me, and he goes, all right, this might feel a bit warm. And next thing you know, I was out. I was gone. I remember a mask being put on my face and him asking me about how I was enjoying it and me going to say, oh, it's really, really love it, and then that's it. That's all I remember. I passed out after that. The anaesthetic worked so quick. It felt really warm. It felt like this warm feeling go up my arm. The team did an incredible. If you're in America or you or can go to America to get your top surgery, I couldn't recommend Dr. Mosser more highly. He was brilliant, and his whole team was brilliant. And if I ever have to have another surgery that's trans-related and he does it, I will be going straight back there. And then I remember waking up. It felt like seconds later, and I remember thinking about elephants, and I remember I couldn't move and I couldn't open my eyes, and I genuinely was like almost like paralyzed, but I was conscious. I couldn't open my eyes and I couldn't move, but I could laugh. I couldn't really make sentences, but I could laugh, and something that cracked me up when I first woke up. I have no idea. My first memory of waking up was thinking about elephants, hearing loads of American accents, and just laughing. And they were like, what's so funny? And I'm like, I don't know. And then like they took me to like another room, like a recovery room, and I just chilled there for a bit. I was just like, I couldn't really move, but I was quite happy, I was quite content. I wasn't in any pain at this point. I was actually very, very calm. I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm happy. And then this lovely nurse came in and she was like, do you want some water? And I was like, yes, oh my goodness, water. So she like held the cup next to me with a little straw, and I was like, oh, thank you so much. And then she's like, do you want some animal crackers? And I was like, oh my goodness, I've never had an animal cracker. She's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm from the UK. And she's like, oh my goodness, I forgot. I was like, yeah. So she fed me animal crackers because I couldn't lift my arms, and she was lovely, and I started coming to a bit more, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I just chilled in that bed for about 45 minutes. And I remember they called my mum. They called my mum like, oh yeah, you know, parent's absolutely fine, woken up fine, everything went well, it's all good. Everything's fine, they're okay, they've woken up, they're quite merry, they're chilling, they're eating animal crackers, they're fine. We'll bring them down in like about 45 minutes. I heard them make this phone call, and I was like, ah, cool. And I tell you what, that 45 minutes felt like 5. I sat there and I didn't know it was 45 minutes at the time. I genuinely thought they called my mum and I went down 5 minutes later. I didn't. I went down 45 minutes later, but I didn't remember. My surgery took about 3 hours. It cost, I think it cost around like 6 to 7 grand for the actual surgery, and then I had to pay for the anaesthetic cost on top of that. So in the end, it ended up costing about 8 to 9 grand. And then obviously I paid for the whole trip, so that cost a lot of money, but the actual surgery cost about that much. They put me in a wheelchair, and I remember complimenting one of the people's shoes in that wheelchair. They took me down in like an elevator, and I was just like chilling. I had a binder on, like a tight binder on with these things called drains that come out, which is basically these tubes that were all the way inside me, came out of the binder at the top, and then sit in like little bags. And that basically drains any excess fluid out. They're a bit grim. I'm sorry if you don't enjoy that type of content. Look away at these photos. But yeah, these little drains that you had to like empty out. And this just basically stops swelling. And well, it doesn't stop swelling, but it reduces swelling. It makes your results better sometimes. Not all surgeons use them. And it just helps the healing process. So I was wearing this tight binder. At this point, I wasn't in any pain. They took me down. I saw my mum, and I was in a wheelchair, and I was like, woo! And mum was like, woo! And I was like, woo! And then we got on an Uber. and the Uber man wasn't expecting to pick up somebody who's just had surgery, so he was like, oh my god, are you okay? And I was like, I'm absolutely fine, thank you so much for asking. And then everybody helped me get into the car, and then I had a pillow in the car, and I was just sat there vibing. I was just chilling in the car, and I was like showing off on Snapchat. I was like, hey, hey. It was so stupid. The Uber driver was so careful. One of the nicest Uber drivers ever. He was like riding really slow over the bumps. He was checking I was okay whenever he drove over the bumps, and then at the end of it he helped walk our bags to the door because Mum needed to help me walk, and then he helped like take all our bags to the door, and we gave him a massive tip, and that was shout out to that Uber driver. He was awesome. And we got back to our little thing, and I sat on the sofa. There is a brilliant picture of me eating pasta on the sofa and I'm like very, 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 very high on drugs, but feeling pretty good at this point. And eventually I was lying in bed a few hours later and I started crying because I was so happy, including the photos. And then it was just like an overwhelming wow. I had never, even with all the drains and the binder, my chest was flat and I was like, whoa! So for that first week I ate Thanksgiving dinner because we were there for Thanksgiving. I watched a lot of American football. I watched loads of Frasier. I watched loads of TV. I didn't really move. I couldn't really do anything by myself. I couldn't get up really by myself. I couldn't sit up by myself. I couldn't sleep on my side, or I could only sleep on my back. That was the only way I could sleep for weeks. I couldn't go to the loo alone. My mother had to help me with going to the loo for the first few days I genuinely couldn't wipe. I couldn't do anything without sounding really grim. It was not fun, and I actually ended up having a bit of an allergic reaction to the binder, the material, so that was really itchy. So I took some antihistamines, but the antihistamines that were fighting that part didn't mix very well with the very, very strong painkillers I was on, and then that gave me really, really bad nightmares, and it was just not a fun experience. The drains towards the end of the week started hurting because all the anaesthetic had worn off after a few days, and the drains started being a bit sore. It wasn't dreadful pain, it wasn't unbearable, it was just this constant kind of, oh, I'm itchy and I'm sore and I can't move and I can't do anything, and it wasn't the most fun that week. It was alright, but it wasn't awesome. And I was so far away from home, I was missing home, I was in a completely new environment, and that was quite an experience. And then a week after my surgery, I stayed in San Francisco, and I went back to Dr. Moss's surgery, and got the drains taken out. So this is where they opened up the binder that I'd had on for an entire week while I was asleep and awake. I hadn't showered in a week. I was able to sit in a bath that didn't get anything wet on my top half, but I hadn't showered for a week. I felt grim, I felt horrible. And I got this binder off, and there's a real good chance well, there's not a really good chance, there's actually a very small chance that your nipples can fall off because they remake them to put back onto you, and so they stitch them back in. And I was very, very scared my nipples were going to fall off because they were like, there was little sponges that they were attached to, and when they take those sponges off, I was worried my nip was just going to come off with it. They didn't. My nips didn't come off. Very pleased about this. And I still have two. Yay! And it was just quite an experience. They took the drains out, and that was, one side hurt a lot, the other side I literally didn't even feel. The guy who did it was so awesome. I think he's called Eric. He was so cool, he was really friendly, he chatted to me the whole time, and then I got to see my chest for the first time with nothing on. Like no binders, no drains, no nothing, no plasters, and I was just like, I didn't know what to do. I was so happy with the results, with how it looked. Everything about it was just incredible. I loved it. I felt awesome. And then I got home, and here we're gonna put a warning up. These are some scabby, kind of gory images. I'm sorry, they're not dreadful, but they're not fun, so look away now if you don't want to see these. I had to wear little plasters on my nipples for like a few weeks, and like these little moisturizing pads to keep the nipples alive essentially and help them heal, but I had these like scabs all the way around. I had scabs all the way around my nipples. There was parts that were still a little bit bloody. I was bruised. You can see like the kind of purple and yellow bruising that happened. It was normal. I just had surgery. This type of stuff is very, very normal. Overall, I was still looking rather good. I was still very pleased. I was quite swollen. And yeah, I recovered from there, and I had another week in San Francisco after I'd had the drains out to kind of recover, and I still wasn't quite feeling well enough until the last day in San Francisco. And the last day in San Francisco, Mum and I decided to go out because the smoke had cleared, and I was feeling well enough after 2 weeks after my surgery. I was feeling like, yeah, actually I feel well enough to go out for a day. And we went out, we did a bus tour around, we went over the Golden Gate Bridge, we went onto Pier 39, and we saw like, we saw like carousels, and like there was these sea lions, and it was just awesome. It was so fun. And I spent at least one day in San Francisco, and that was really awesome. I wonder how many times I said awesome in this. And then the next day we started the whole journey backwards. I went on that train home. I did the train home, and then we got back to New York, but this time we had a bit more time in New York. We had like an extra day in New York. So Mum and I went to like Alexander Hamilton's grave. We went to like lots of different sightseeing places. It was fun, it was good. It was really fun, and that night we went to go and see Dear Evan Hansen, which is a musical, and random of luck, I bumped into Miles McKenna. If you don't know, Miles McKenna is a YouTuber. I bumped into Miles McKenna and Megan Curry, and I was blown away because Miles McKenna had actually also gone with Dr. Mosser for surgery way before me, but I only realised this after I'd had surgery with Dr. Mosser, and then I realised that, and then I met Miles McKenna at Dear Evan Hansen. He probably doesn't remember, but I do, and for me that was huge. I met one of my idols like 2 weeks after having top surgery in America, in my very, very last night in America, and the night before I left I just bumped into him while my mum was in the loo, and I was like, oh my goodness, and I must have acted like such a fool. But he was one of the loveliest people I've ever met. Megan Curry was so sweet as well. Oh my goodness, they were both so lovely, and I had a great time that night. And then we did the whole boat journey home. That was not fun again. Storm season, I was seasick, and also I just had top surgery and I was feeling very unwell. I just spent all of my time either in the cabin or in the buffet. That's all I did on the boat. Yeah, then we got home, and that was my experience. About a month after I was feeling a bit better, it was Christmas at this point. That Christmas I couldn't really hug anyone for a while. They could hug me really gently, but I got back to college. I went back to college for like 2 days because I was off college for 6 weeks, and people came to hug me and I was like, ah, don't touch me. And I started healing, and about 6 months after my surgery I was able to go swimming for the first time. I was so nervous, I didn't know whether or not I wanted to go without a top on, but I did. I healed up quite nicely. I can show you, I don't really have that many pictures of actually my whole process, but what I will do is I will show you now. I am now 1 year and 6 months after top surgery, so this is essentially what it's going to look like for a while. The scars might get a bit lighter. Kane, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna get topless. I'm allowed to do this because I've got no boobs, okay? So I don't know how well it's gonna focus. I'll check and I'll redo it if it doesn't. But this is my chest now. 1 year and 6 months after the surgery. As you can see, my nips have healed very nicely. Very, very pleased. This is what I call my cow nipple because this one looks a bit different to this one. This one's a lot flatter where this one sticks out a little bit. Obviously I could do, you know, if I lost some weight I would have kind of pecs, but I don't. They're kind of muscly though, they're not bad. You can see I've got some, oh yeah, I got a ghost tattoo, but don't even worry about it. You can see I've got like some stretch marks that happened here after my surgery, but they've faded a lot. The only part of my scar that's really thick is this middle part, because this is the part that just didn't heal very well. It was really scabby for a long time, and that part just got a tiny weeny bit infected, not dreadfully, but enough that the scar kind of got a bit thick. But as you can see all the way around, the scar is actually really quite thin and really, really flat, and it feels alright, it feels okay. The scar actually goes all the way underneath my arms, all the way to like here. Which is quite far into like almost onto my back, and that's because I had quite a large chest, and I wasn't, and in order to stop dog ears, which are like excess fat here, they cut further back so that that wouldn't happen, and I'm really pleased with it. I'm really pleased with the fact the curve that happens. I personally chose the shape of these scars. I drew my surgeon a picture and showed him and was like, can you please do this? And he was like, yeah, sure. And he's brilliant about that. It was brilliant. I'd say like sensitivity wise, I've got feeling in like, all of this has got its feeling back. the part under here, I can't feel that very well. That's like quite numb. And all under here, I can't feel, like pretty much cannot feel that. I can feel it on my finger, but I can't actually feel it on my skin. I can just about feel my nips, and I can just about feel around it, but it's not comfortable. It's not a touch that I enjoy at all. If Evan ever like accidentally puts his hand there, I'm like, ah, get off. Only because it's almost like pins and needly, but not painful, just like really tingly. I'm sure that will change over time, and it's always changing. I get random bursts of pain, of like nerve ending pain, which is just like nerves reconnecting and the feeling coming back. I would say 1.5 years after my surgery, I would say I have about 70 to 80% of the feeling that I had before back, like in the skin, like nerve wise. I wasn't ever desperate for the feeling back, so it doesn't really matter to me, but I would say that actually I've got a good amount of feeling back. I can feel most of my chest now. The scars don't hurt anymore. It doesn't hurt at all anymore. It's just a bit tingly and funny. And the only things that do hurt is sometimes, occasionally, I get tiny stabs of pain for like 10 seconds, which is just where a nerve is like reconnected a bit, and I suddenly just go ah, ah, and Evan always laughs at me because I'm like, ah, my nipple, ah. Okay, I'm good now. That was my top surgery journey. It was a lot more detailed than that, but I didn't want to make this video like 5 hours long, so Kane, I hope this was okay to edit. So yeah, thank you so much. I hope that made sense. And everybody stay safe and well. And Black Lives Matter.